YouTube starts. Okay. I'd like to begin this morning by, or this morning, for me it's good morning to everyone. For you it's good afternoon or good evening, whatever time of day, and whichever day you are listening or watching this class. And we will begin as usual with the prayers for Refuge and Bodhichitta. So please recite these prayers with great faith and devotion. O sangye chedan soge chonam la chancho bardo dane chapsum che dage chenyen gibe sanam ji Drola penjer sanje drobar sho sanje chedang sogi chonam la chancho bardo dane kyapsum che dage chenyen gipe sanam yi Drola penjer sanje drobar sho sanje chedang Sogi chonam la chancho pardo dane kyapsum chi dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi dola penjer sanje robar sho until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Semjen tamje dewa tan dewe judan dembar jurje donga dan donga judan rawa jurje donga mebe dewa tamba tan min rawa jurje Yerin chadani tan ralve tanyon shambola nebar jurje. May all sentient beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be parted from the highest joy, which is free of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free of attachment or hatred for those near or far. And now please think to yourselves that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings, as limitless as space, to the state of true happiness, the state of completely perfect Buddhahood. And in order to do this, we need to meditate. And in order to meditate, we need to first study and contemplate the Dharma. So think to yourself that you are listening to the Dharma this morning or today with this motivation of bodhicitta. And the Dharma that we are listening to is the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as commented upon by the ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje. of the ninth karma of the 8 chapters of the Treasury of Abhidharma, or areas as they're called in this text. We are on the 7th area, the teachings on wisdom. And within the teachings on wisdom, there are 4 main sections. There is the section about the distinctions between, the section on the knowings, the explanation of the possession. The third is how the knowings are all attained. We have already been through all 3 of these sections, and so now we're talking about the qualities of the knowings. And so among these qualities of the knowings, there are the 2 topics. There are the unshared qualities, and there are the shared qualities. So the unshared qualities are those qualities that are Buddhas alone, that are not shared by any other beings, whether any other arhats or listeners or people on the path or ordinary sentient beings. These are unique qualities to the Buddha. And then the shared qualities are those qualities that also can be attained and developed by beings on the path. So here we're in speak of these 2, we've been speaking about the unshared qualities, the 18 unshared qualities of a Buddha. And so these 18 unshared qualities, this topic has 3 topics: the overview and the explanation and summary. And so as is mentioned in the overview, the Buddha's unshared qualities are 18, the powers and so forth. There are the 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, and the 3 foundations of mindfulness and the explanation and great compassion. So those are the 18 qualities, the 18 particular qualities of a Buddha that are not shared with other beings. And as we discussed yesterday, of course, there are other presentations that are given in other traditions, that are given in other sutras. In other words, the Buddha taught these many times. Sometimes you, like in the Sublime Continuum by Maitreya, you talk about the 32 qualities of removal, the 32 qualities of wisdom that develop from the removal of all the obscurations, and they include the 18 unshared qualities, the 10 powers, 4 foundations of mind, the 4 fearlessnesses and such. So these are common. The way they're divided up, the way they're named, are different in different traditions, but basically we're talking about the same thing. So here, there are the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, the 3 foundations of mindfulness, and great compassion. So yesterday we spoke about the 10 powers, and there was a question that came up about this, about the 10 powers and the manifestations of a Buddha. And the question reads, given that the Venerable Trungpa Rinpoche has taken a human form in lifetime, and not just Trungpa Rinpoche, all of the various tulkus in the Tibetan tradition, and is bound by birth, age, and death on a relative level, how would you qualify the manifestations of the 10 powers of a Buddha in regards to Trungpa Rinpoche's manifestations of the powers in relative and ultimate terms? So here, basically we're saying when we have Tibetan tulkus, now, where do they fit in here is basically the question. How do we kind of match these 2 presentations? Because we have the Buddha, who clearly has all the physical characteristics as well as the characteristics of wisdom. And then we have tulkus, who many of whom do not have show the same physical characteristics as the Nirmanakaya Buddha. And yet in the Vajrayana, we're told to look at them as being the same as Buddhas, and we're told that we should think of them as being Buddhas. So the first point is that whenever we're talking about any Buddhist teaching, it's important to remember, what level are we talking on? In which sort of presentation are we doing? Because there are many different presentations that the Buddha taught for people on different levels, even within each of the vehicles. With the teachings of the foundation vehicle, for some beings, he taught birth, aging, sickness, and death happen to people, to beings. He taught that there are beings. And other times he taught that there are no beings, that are selfless, empty. They're just the dharmas that make them up. So even within the foundation vehicle, there are various teachings given to different individuals because different people have different needs. So when we're talking about the teachings here on the Great Exposition, we're talking about the foundation vehicle. And when we talk about the unshared qualities of the Buddha, well, for the Great Exposition vehicle, a Buddha is someone who has gone through the 3 uncountable eons, which, as we discussed in chapter 3 and mentioned again yesterday, I believe, 3 uncountable eons is not just some sort of infinite. It's a specific and very long period of time. 3 times 10 to the 60th power, 10 to the 59th power eons, and each eon is millions of years long. So this is just like an incredibly long period of time that he spent gathering the accumulation of merit. And he didn't become a bodhisattva on the level partway into it, the way the Mahayana Sutra tradition says. He was just an ordinary being without any particular, without any particular, I mean, of course, in some ways extraordinary, but we'd look at him and say extraordinary, but he didn't have any of the qualities of a bodhisattva, according to the Great Exposition, that we would talk about in the Mahayana Sutras. So he went through these 3 uncountable eons, and then at the end he went through another 100 eons or great eons in order to gather the final accumulation of merit to have the 60, have the major marks and the signs. And then finally, he took birth as an ordinary human being, the Siddhartha Gautama, the prince, as an ordinary being. And he was an ordinary being until the night where he sat, the night before the full moon of the Vesak month of whatever year it was, I think 583 BC perhaps. If you look at the calculations of the eclipses, it probably was in May of they didn't talk about May back then, but it would have been the Vesak month of 583 BC, I think. It's a figure that one astrologer calculated. At any rate, so something way back then, 2,600 years ago. Until that night, he was an ordinary being. He hadn't even got to the path of joining. And on that last night, he went through all four stages of the path of joining. He saw the truth, and then he liberated himself through the path of meditation to become a Buddha at dawn. So he did basically all, as it says, the Buddha on one seat, as it said earlier in chapter 6. So you're just in one meditation for one night, according to the Great Exposition School. So this is what the Great Exposition School sees as a Buddha. Because he had spent, and we'll get to this later on this morning, because he had spent 3 uncountable eons plus an extra 100. I guess if you're talking about uncountable eons, an extra 100 eons isn't really all that long. But he had spent all that time gathering the accumulation of merit, as a result of which he had many extraordinary qualities. And so that is how you get those extraordinary qualities, according to the Great Exposition. Now, most beings don't do that. So therefore, they can achieve the level of arhat. Some beings will gather the accumulation of merit for a shorter period of time. And right now it's slipping my mind, but I think it's like 100 eons, or maybe it's 1,000 eons. Anyways, it's a much shorter time than 3 uncountable eons. And they become Pratyeka Buddhas. They have greater merit, so they have a higher result. But they don't have the qualities of a Buddha. So here, when we talk about these unshared qualities in the context of the Great Exposition, it's only someone who's been through that entire path who has these qualities. Now, of course, in an infinite number of realms, in a beginningless samsara, there have been many Buddhas in the past. The Theravada tradition talks about 32. The Abhidharma talks about 75,000 that the Buddha served, and the Buddha served and followed 75,000 Buddhas in his first set of uncountable eons, 76,000 in the second, and another 75,000 in the third. So there have been many, many Buddhas in the past, and there will be many Buddhas in the future. And there are undoubtedly many beings who are on the path of gathering the accumulations of merit in order to become a Buddha, no matter how long it takes. Which means that they have to have a lot of courage to do that. It's a long time. And it's a lot of hardship that you undergo on the path in order to get to the state of Buddhahood. But even if you think about 3 uncountable eons as being an incredibly long time, it's actually pretty short in comparison to infinite, endless samsara, right? I mean, any number in comparison to infinite is small, essentially. And so any duration of time in comparison to endless samsara is a short period of time. And the benefits are great. And these benefits came out of his compassion. So that's the great exposition tradition. Now, in the Tibetan tradition, we have the system of tulkus and so forth, and they're often said to be Buddhas. And when we see our root gurus, we're instructed we should see them as Buddhas, although sometimes it's hard to know what that actually means. And some people say that you can't really see your guru as a Buddha until you have actually seen emptiness. In addition, in the Mahayana, when we talk about the Tibetan tradition is a Mahayana tradition, and their teaching, the teachings are different. The teachings of the Mahayana Buddha is that the Buddha, as you go through the 3, in the sutras, as you go through the 3 uncountable eons, for the first uncountable set of eons, that's 10 to the 59th eons, you are an ordinary individual. Then in the second set of uncountable eons, then you are a bodhisattva. You go through the first 7 bodhisattva levels. On the third uncountable eons, you go through the 8th, 9th, and 10th bodhisattva levels, and then you achieve Buddhahood in Tushita, in the realm of Tushita, and then send an emanation, a Trulpiku or a Nirmanakaya, that displays the deeds of a Buddha in the in the last lifetime. So for according to the Mahayana, Siddhartha Gautama was by no means an ordinary individual. Siddhartha Gautama was an emanation body who took birth in pretended to, and of course in Tibetan we often translate it as displayed the life. Basically what it's saying is he pretended to go through everything he went through in the first 36 years of his life in order to make us want to practice. Because if he had just showed up as, I mean, he obviously was an extraordinary person. When you read the stories, even from the Great Exposition, even from the moment he was born, he was an extraordinary child. But he was still but if you kind of see him as being an ordinary individual, that sort of makes you think, oh, I can do it too. Which of course we can. All we have to do is want to do it, right? So he did it to make us want to do it. So the difference is that the qualities appear differently. And so the one is someone who becomes a Buddha in the last life, someone who is versus someone who already is a Buddha and who can make infinite emanations anywhere in any different way. And so when we look at the Tibetan Tulkus, then we would say, oh, if they're Buddhas, then they're probably Nirmanakayas, right? There's a Dharmakaya someplace and a Sambhogakaya someplace, and these are Nirmanakayas. So we would see, and actually the Tibetan word tulku actually means Nirmanakaya. And so in that respect, we would say that Buddha, that someone like Trungpa Rinpoche would have all of the qualities, all of the 10 powers and 4 fearlessnesses and so forth of a Buddha, and yet be pretending to be an ordinary individual, because if the Buddha showed up looking like something like that statue, I shouldn't point, like that statue back there, everyone would be like, I can't relate. I mean, think about it. If we think about it in the West, what do we want in, especially Westerners? I mean, everyone has their own cultural expectations of what a guru should look like. And so for Tibetans, you know, the guru has to be wearing robes and look like a monk. The Chinese, you have, you know, they're expecting the gurus to be monks or nuns or whatever. You know, you're expecting them to look in a certain way. And then when we get to the Western, who came over here and spread the Dharma most effectively first? Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He realized, wait a minute, if I keep my robes on, no one's going to relate to me. And so he appeared as an ordinary individual. Even today, you have many Tibetan gurus who are kind of looking a little bit like, what do we say? Bad boys, because Westerners like bad boys. We like people who are misbehaving. You know, a lot of Westerners can't really relate to someone like, you know, just wearing these strange clothes and shaved head. well, actually a lot of Westerners shave their head. That's pretty cool, I guess. But, following vows, come on, that's just not the way we do it. So they want someone who can kind of be, because they feel they can relate to it more, because that's just our culture, right? So the gurus have to appear in ways that we can connect to, and so that's why even if they're Buddhas, they're appearing in ways that we can relate to. So that's the main thing to show here. Because if Trungpa Rinpoche were, had a big bump on the top of his head, and we could call it by Anushnisha, but most people would just look at it and say, wow, he's some sort of alien, something's wrong with him. So that's how that goes. Anyway, so I think now we need to actually return to the text. And in terms of the text, we covered the 10 powers yesterday. And so now we've come to the section, the explanation of the 4 fearlessnesses. The heading for this is on the bottom of page 519, but the actual text starts on page 520. And so okay, that's this one. Okay. So what is it? The explanation of the 4 fearlessnesses, and this has 2 points. So the 4 fearlessnesses, there's the overview, and then there is the explanation. So the overview reads, there are 4 types of fearlessness. There are 4 types of fearlessness. The Tathagata proclaimed aloud, I myself have completely, perfectly awakened. I have distinguished the defilements. And then when teaching the listeners, he proclaimed, these obstruct liberation. These are the paths that definitely deliver one from samsara. As he sees no true reason that anyone could say it is not like that and defeat him in accord with the Dharma, he attained fearlessness. So here, when we say fearless, he means that not that he's not afraid of being attacked by anything. Of course, he has such great physical powers that no one could really attack him. But what he means instead is that no one could dispute, no one could shake him. He's certain, 110% certain in his realization, in his abandonment of the defilements, in his recognition of what is going to prevent his disciples from progressing along the path, and from his understanding of what the paths are. So this here in the commentary is giving this in a very short form, but it is also described in a sutra that is quoted in the Yashometra text. And so let me just show that. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. So the sutra, and now actually there's a much longer quotation in Yashometra, and in order to fit it on one screen and in order to be able to translate it all in a reasonable amount of time, I kind of shortened it a little bit. So there's a bit more, and so I've kind of condensed it a little bit, but not as far as Wangchuk Dorje did. So the Buddha was speaking to his bhikkhus, and he said to them, if any bhikshu or Brahmin were to dispute my awakening to manifest perfect Buddhahood by saying, these qualities are not manifest perfect Buddhahood, and would discuss it in accord with the Dharma, I do not see any true reason to dispute or discuss it. Thus, as I do not see any true reason, I have gained happiness, and have no fear. I have gained fearlessness. In other words, what he's saying is that he's certain, absolutely certain, no matter what anyone would say, you aren't fully enlightened because of this. You aren't fully enlightened because you speak, and everyone who speaks must have desire. You say, no, I am fully enlightened. Or so forth. That actually is a dispute that the Mimamsaka school made of the Buddha. Of course, they made it a few centuries later. But they said he couldn't have been a Buddha. He could speak, and you have to have desire in order to speak. The Vedas are pure. They don't have an author. No one spoke them. So later, Buddhist people say, but the Buddha, if they had said that to him, he'd say, that's not a true reason. So then the second of the 4 fearlessness says, If any bhikshu or Brahmin were to dispute my having extinguished the defilements by saying, you have not extinguished these defilements, and then discusses it in accord with the Dharma, I do not see any true reason to dispute or discuss it. Thus, as I do not see any true reason, I have gained happiness and have no fear. I have gained fearlessness. So this is the second. This is the reason why, as it continues on in the sutra, this is why he was like the great bull, unafraid of anything. This is if anyone were to say, you speak, so you must have desire, you'd say, no. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't have any true reason. I have no fear of that. No worries. Then the third is, if any bhikshu or Brahmin were to dispute and say of the dharmas that I have told my disciples are obstructions, and say, if you do those, it will not obstruct you, and discusses it in accord with the Dharma, I do not see any true reason to dispute or discuss it. Thus, as I do not see any true reason, I have gained happiness and have no fear. I have gained fearlessness. So he's convinced, so he knows. It's not just that he's convinced. When you say convinced in English, it makes him think that maybe he shouldn't be convinced, but he knows. He definitely knows that what he has said are obstacles truly are obstacles. So he has no fear over that. And then the fourth is, if any bhikshu or Brahmin were to dispute and say, what I have taught my disciples to be the path of deliverance is not the path of, and say, this is not deliverance, and discuss it in accord with the Dharma, I do not see any true reason to dispute or discuss it. Thus, as I do not see any true reason, I have gained happiness and have no fear. I have gained fearlessness. So these are the four fearlessnesses. So to go through them, the four fearlessnesses are first, being the first two are related to the benefit for himself, that he has achieved complete and perfect Buddhahood, and that he has eliminated all the abandonments. The third and fourth are for the benefit for others, that he has taught the obstructions to the path, and that the teaching, the path that he has taught leads to true deliverance, leads to true emancipation. So those are the four fearlessnesses. So that's identifying what the four fearlessnesses are. So next, we wanted to find out, because we're talking about these of course, we're talking about the Abhidharma. So what do we have to do? We have to figure out, well, how do we classify all of these different fearlessnesses? Which of the knowings are there? What are the powers? Are they like? And so the explanation here says they're similar to the first, 10th, second, and 7th of the powers. In other words, the first fearlessness is like the first power. The second fearlessness is like the 10th power, which is knowing the extinction, the wisdom of knowing the extinction of all defilements. The third is like the second power, which is the power of knowing karma and results. And the seventh is like knowing the capacity, causal, knowing the paths that lead everywhere. 10th, yes, knowing the paths that lead everywhere. Okay, so what are their natures, you ask? They are similar to the powers. In other words, just as the powers are the different types of knowing, so are these four types of fearlessness. The fearlessness to proclaim the benefit for himself of perfect realization is like the first power of knowing the possible and impossible. He knows what happened. He knows what is possible, what is true, what is proper, and what is not true, not proper, not possible. It is not possible that he was not a Buddha. It is possible, that it's definite that he is a Buddha. The second, the fearlessness to proclaim the benefit for himself of perfect abandonment. In other words, this is saying this is his benefit for himself. The benefit is the fearlessness of perfect abandonment is just like the 10th of the powers, the power of knowing the extinction of defilements. The fearlessness of teaching the dharmas that obstruct for the benefit of others is just like the second power of knowing karma and its fully ripened result. So just as that second power, knowing what actions lead to what results, so this second fearlessness, or this third fearlessness is the same. And the fearlessness of teaching the Dharma of emancipation for the benefit of others is just like the seventh of the powers, the power of knowing the paths that lead everywhere. In other words, knowing what paths will lead to liberation, what paths will lead to samsara and where in samsara, and teaching people the paths appropriately. So those are the four fearlessnesses. And so now we have come to the three foundations of mindfulness. And as I mentioned yesterday, it's the same term as the four foundations of mindfulness, but it's a different, something a little bit different in meaning. So the three are mindfulness and awareness, it says here. When we talk about the four foundations of mindfulness, they are prajna. Here, these three foundations of mindfulness are mindfulness and awareness. So what are they? Well, as explains in the text, there are three foundations of mindfulness taught in the sutras. When the Tathagata teaches the Dharma, if the beings gathered are respectful and wish to listen, he is neither pleased nor attached. That is the first. So you're teaching the Dharma, you're explaining something, and everyone says, oh, that's great. Doesn't matter to the Bhagwan. It's like he's completely fine. The second alternative is if they are not respectful and don't wish to listen. So if they're basically, I don't know, getting ready to throw rotten tomatoes at him, or if they're just, chattering among themselves. This is more like the chattering among themselves, drinking and having a social event instead of listening to the Dharma, as often happens when you go to Dharma teachings where there are lots of Tibetans. He is neither displeased nor angry. He doesn't get upset about it. It doesn't bother him. I mean, of course, he'd probably rather on a certain level that everyone teaches, but he understands. He's neither displeased nor angry. And then if the Buddha is teaching the Dharma, and you've got two groups in the audience, you've got all the people having the picnic on the one side or who are complaining about it. And then you've got people who are sitting there like this on the other side. He's neither displeased nor angry. He's not happy about the ones who are sitting there like this, and he's not unhappy about the ones who are having their picnic. Instead, he abides in equanimity with mindfulness and awareness. So it's the two mental factors of mindfulness and awareness. So the essence of these is mindfulness and awareness, but they are taught as three because of the distinctions in the gathering. In other words, they're all essentially the same, but you divide it into three just because when you have, a receptive audience, or you have an audience that is ignoring you, or you have an audience that is mixed with receptive people and people who are ignoring you. And it's all the same for the Buddha. So those are the three foundations of mindfulness. And so now we come to, So now we come to the section, well, the Buddhas, it's not just the Buddhas who have this quality. Well, then it says, the listeners and self-Buddhas, also, that is Pratyeka Buddhas, also have this quality. So it is not appropriate to be unshared, you say. In other words, when great arhats would teach the Buddha, or teach the Dharma, they also would, have the same thing. They wouldn't be too upset. And so you can't say it's an unshared quality. That is, you can't say that this is unique to the Buddha. And the response is, this is not the case. And the reason that is given is because the listeners and self-Buddhas have not abandoned the imprints, but the Buddhas have. So here's this word imprints. In Tibetan, it's bakchat, or in Sanskrit, vasana. So bakchat, or sometimes translated as habitual tendencies. So what are these imprints that we're talking about? Well, in this context, the imprints are features or particulars in their mind stream that out of the power of previous training and afflictions have the ability to move the body and the speech. In other words, it's that the arhats still have, because they still have the remnants or these imprints of the afflictions within them, they're going to affect them to a certain degree in their what do we say? So they're gonna have some effect on them. So on their outside, they may look like it's the same as the Buddha, but it's not quite, because they aren't as deeply mindful and aware. They're just deeply equanimous about this. So in some commentary, so it's kind of like this capacity or power. And so some of the authors of the Tikas, that means the authors of the Indian commentaries, say that these are in the mind. Some of them do. And some say that they are features of a neutral mind. Yashomatra kind of identifies them as a capacity, but he doesn't specifically say mind or body or what. But I think we can assume if it's an affliction, the capacity of an affliction, it's probably mental. So some that they say that they're a neutral mind. In other words, they are not, even though they're afflictions, even though they're the imprints of afflictions, they are not unvirtuous. They are neutral. So that is the quality of the great compassion, or excuse me, of the 4 fearlessnesses. So now we come to the teaching on great compassion. The great compassion relative mind is greater from its gathering in its aspect sphere and being equal. There are 8 ways that it is different. Actually, this is a little bit, this translation isn't quite right. It's got a big mistake in it. It should be the great compassion is the great compassion relative mind. Or great compassion relative mind is from its gathering, or is from the accumulation, that is the accumulation of merit and wisdom, from its aspects, from its sphere, from being equal, and from being far superior. It's far greater than regular compassion. And then how is it greater? Well, there are 8 ways that it is different. There are 8 things that distinguish it from regular compassion. So to go through the commentary here. And great compassion is inherently relative knowing or mind. So among the 10 knowings, great compassion is relative mind, because you're focusing on sentient beings and on their minds and so forth, and on their suffering, and that's defiled. So you have to have a knowing that focuses on the defiled, and among the 10 different types of knowing, that is relative knowing. If it were not relative knowing, not only would it be proven not to focus on all sentient beings are defiled, so you want to be able to, if you have great compassion, you focus on all sentient beings. So you have to focus on the sentient beings, right? So it has to be relative knowing. So that's one reason. Another reason is it would not be proven to have as aspects the 3 sufferings as compassion does. So in other words, compassion is looking at suffering. Suffering is defiled. If you have something that is looking at the undefiled aspects, then it's not going to see the suffering. So it has to be relative knowing in order to really view the suffering. Because what do we call compassion? Compassion is seeing the suffering of other sentient beings and wishing that they weren't suffering, wishing that beings be free of suffering. As we say, wishing that every morning or every day when we recite the prayers, wishing that sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So that's what we mean by compassion in general. So it has to focus on those relative aspects of the 3 types of suffering. So we've got compassion and we've got great compassion. Well, what's the difference? Why is this one called great compassion? So it is greater because it is perfectly created by the great gathering of the accumulation of merit and wisdom. So in other words, the Buddha went through the, what do we say? Spent the 3 uncountable eons gathering the accumulations of merit and wisdom. He practiced the 6 paramitas, or the 6 transcendences, or paramitas. And so gathering the accumulation of merit by generosity and discipline and patience. He gathered the accumulation of prajna by practicing prajna. And then by practicing diligence, he gained both, because he was diligent in being generous. He was excited about practicing discipline and being patient. That means that diligence is an aid to your practice to your gathering the accumulation of merit. And it also, when you're diligent and you're excited to train in dhyana and in prajna, then it helps you gain your accumulation of wisdom. So it helps gain the accumulation of prajna, or wisdom. And in with dhyana, that also functions to support both relative and both the accumulation of merit through meditating on loving kindness and the four immeasurables, and also helping to meditate on prajna by meditating on the four foundations of mindfulness. So you've got these 6 transcendencies that he meditated on, that he practiced for a very, very long period of time, 3 uncountable eons plus an extra 100. And 100 great eons. And so that means that he has a tremendous gathering of a tremendous accumulation of merit and wisdom. And that's the first reason. The second reason why this is greater than regular compassion is because its aspect is consideration of the 3 sufferings. So when we have compassion, that is focusing on one type of suffering, the suffering of suffering. You're looking at people who are in bad states, who are in wretched positions, and or even animals in the hells who are in terrible pain and suffering, the hungry ghosts, or looking at other humans who are suffering and experiencing the visible sufferings. And then wishing that they be free from that. That is regular compassion. Great compassion is greater because it is also looking at the it is also seeing the aspects of it is also focusing on considering the other 2 sufferings, the suffering of change and the pervasive suffering of formation. So in this way, due to its aspect, it is greater than regular compassion. Now, the third way that it is greater is because of its focus and sphere. So focus and sphere are similar. In other words, what we're talking about is the range of beings that you're thinking about. So here, the sphere of great compassion is all sentient beings of the 3 realms, rather than some subset of them, such as only the beings of desire realm or so forth. So it's focusing on all sentient beings. Actually, there was an interesting thing that the Gyalwang Karmapa said about this. This is worth thinking about. Like the difference between great compassion and compassion. You can have limitless compassion without it. You could think one explanation is that you can have limitless compassion that is not great compassion. For example, if you feel compassion for an infinite number of sentient beings, that would be compassion. If you feel compassion for each and every being in infinite space, that is great compassion. Now, the difference is that if you're feeling compassion for a limitless number of sentient beings in all directions, if you have an infinite number of sentient beings total, and you say that you're going to feel compassion for 1 out of every 2 of them, you're still feeling compassion for an infinite number of sentient beings, but there's also an infinite number of sentient beings whom you're not feeling compassion for. So think of the great compassion, if you're saying each and every sentient being, it's not just, 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 10, which is also, of course, a limitless number. It's like each and every infinite sentient being. So this is another way that it is greater. So that's a different explanation. That's not one that we find in the Abhidharma. That's one that His Holiness mentioned in his teachings on the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa last winter. And because it is equal in the way it engages beings. Saying that it's equal in the way it's engaging beings, it's not like discriminating among some beings and not others. It's saying the same for all sentient beings. So you say instead of feeling suffering for those sentient beings who are experiencing visible suffering, the suffering of suffering, it's feeling a compassion for all sentient beings equally. Remember, and another distinction is remembering that all sentient beings of the 3 realms have the suffering of formation. And then another difference is the nature of it. Its nature, as it says here, and because it is full knowing, or because it is prajna by nature. So great compassion is prajna. Regular compassion is by essence non-hatred, an absence of hatred. Here it is prajna. And because it is prajna, it is extremely sharp. So there is nothing greater than that. So then it said that there are basically 8 ways that great compassion is different from great compassion, comparing the two. And so Wangchuk Dorje here summarizes it in a verse. And a similar verse is found in the Chim Abhidharma. And so the verse, so it says, so the commentary before the verse reads, how many things make compassion and great compassion different, you ask? There are 8 ways they are different in essence and so forth. The 8 are, in essence, non-hatred, non-delusion. In focus, 1 realm or 3 realms. In aspect, 1 suffering or 3. In level, 4 jhanas, the 4th. In beings, the listeners, the victor. In attainment, the detached or the peak. In meaning, they don't fully protect or fully protect. And indeed, partial or impartial. So to go back to the beginning of this list. So in essence, compassion is non-hatred, as I mentioned before. It's the wish that beings be free of suffering, and it's suffering and the causes of suffering, so it's the opposite of hatred. But great compassion is different. It is prajna, or non-delusion, the absence of any delusion, seeing everything clearly. So that's the first of the 8 distinctions. The second difference is in focus, 1 realm or 3 realms. So compassion focuses primarily on the realms where there's visible suffering. That would be the desire realm. But the great compassion focuses on all 3 realms. Here, of course, there's a little bit of dispute about it. Great compassion is on the level of the, as we will go through in a moment, it's on the level of the 4th jhana. So the question is, does it focus on the formless realm or not? So here the position is that it does. There are other masters who say that it does not focus on the formless realm. But in the general teaching here, Vasubandhu's main teaching is that great compassion focuses on the beings in all 3 realms, the desire, form, and formless. In aspect, 1 suffering or 3. So the aspect, or the way it's seeing it, is that the compassion is focusing on the 1 suffering of the suffering of suffering. And great compassion is focusing on all 3 types, the suffering of change, and the pervasive suffering of formation. In levels, the 4 jhanas, the 4th. So in terms of the levels, compassion can be meditated upon in any of the 4 jhanas. It doesn't have to be the 4th, but the great compassion occurs on the level of the 4th jhana. So when you actually manifesting when the Buddha is actually manifesting the great compassion is when the Buddha is on the 4th jhana. In beings, so which beings can have it? In beings, the listeners, that is disciples of the Buddha, and the victor, that is the Buddha. So the listeners have compassion, the Buddha has great compassion. In terms of attainment, it's what the level is. So either you have been detached from here, attainment, detached or the peak. So detached means detached from the desire realm, but the Buddha is attached from the peak of existence. So in other words, the listeners who are detached from the desire realm are able to develop compassion, but they're not able to achieve great compassion because they're not yet liberated. They aren't liberated from the peak of existence. So in meaning, compassion does not offer full protection to all sentient beings. It doesn't fully protect, whereas great compassion does offer full protection, does fully protect all sentient beings. And indeed, there's the partial and an impartial. And so, yes, compassion sees, so if you have just regular compassion, it sees all beings partially. It just, you're looking at those beings who are having suffering and not focusing on those who don't have visible suffering. Whereas great compassion is looking equally at all sentient beings, regardless of whether they have visible suffering or the suffering of suffering at this time, recognizing that they all have the suffering of formation. So those are the 3, that was going through the 18 different unshared qualities of the Buddha, the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, the 3 foundations of mindfulness, and what do we say? And the great compassion. So now we've come to the shared qualities of the shared, or excuse me, how the Buddhas, the summary is how the Buddhas are equal in some features. So basically we're saying Buddhas all have these unshared qualities. So how are they equal? All Buddhas are, as it says here, All Buddhas are the equal in accumulation, Dharma body, and acts for wanderers' benefit. So that's the way they're equal, is the accumulation of merit and wisdom. In the Dharma body, well, we'll come to that one in a moment. And in their acts for the benefit of sentient beings. So they're all the same in these three respects. No matter how else they look, whatever other differences there might be, they all have these three. They've all gone through that great accumulation of merit. They all have the Dharma body and the acts for wanderers' benefit. So, are all Buddhas equal in all aspects, you ask? All Buddhas are the equal in three ways. The first is the excellent cause, having completed the two accumulations of merit and wisdom. So I think I've been through that enough today. The second is the excellent result, acquiring the transformation of the undefiled accumulations. So they've completely, which is the Dharma body. So in other words, what this is saying is that they have developed all the undefiled qualities, and so that you have the body of them. So here, body is kind of like in the meaning of a collection. Sometimes we talk about like a body as being like a collection, like a body of people, a body of something. You know, you talk about a collection as a body. So that's the meaning of the word body, or kaya in Sanskrit here. And the Dharma here refers to the qualities, the undefiled qualities of a Buddha. So they have completed, they've gathered this, and they have then transformed them, made them into the Buddha. They've completely transformed them, the excellent result of the Dharma body. And so then the excellent benefit is acting for wanderers' benefit, to place them in the higher realms in the liberation of enlightenment. So they all act to benefit all sentient beings, either by bringing those who aren't ready to go into the path of liberation, bringing them to higher realms, and those who are, bringing them onto the paths of the three vehicles, the vehicles of the listeners, the Pratitya Buddhas, and the Buddhas. Otherwise, if they were not equal in this respect, we could say, well, some Buddhas would be better or worse, which is impossible. We'd say, yeah, Shakyamuni, he was a good Buddha. Kashyapa, he was okay. No, we're not going to say that. Who would ever say that? Maitreya, well, we'll see how he turns out. No. They're all equal in these qualities, but they appear differently in some ways, so they are unequal or different in other respects. So how are they different? How are they unequal? But not in lifespan, caste, or size. But however, they are not equal or not comparable in their lifespan, caste, or body size, because they display those variously in accord with those who need to be tamed. So when we're talking about body in their lifespan, sometimes Buddhas are born in an age of perfection when the lifespan is for humans is 80,000 years. And at that point, the Buddhas are going to have an 80,000 year lifespan. Sometimes they're born at a time when beings have a lifespan of 100 years, such as the Shakyamuni Buddha, and then they live in accord with that lifespan. In other words, they live a lifespan that is reasonable for the time that they are in. So that is the first. The second is the caste. Now, of course, in Western society, we don't really we have social class as opposed to caste, and they're related but different, similar but different. So caste, sometimes the Buddhas are born as Brahmins. Sometimes they're born as Kshatriyas, they say. Of course, this is in the context of, I think I mentioned this the other day, all of the Buddhist sutras kind of take it as a given that every society in the past and every society in the future is essentially the same as the society that they were in, that there were kings and 4 castes, and, they never thought about there being republicans or republics or democracies or any other sort of thing. They had things that are kind of like dictatorships, but they were just, wrath or tyrant kings, so it was different. They just sort of assumed everything was going to be the same as their society. So when we're talking about the Buddha, well, they just assume that the Buddha is going to be reborn either, sometimes as a Brahmin, sometimes as a Kshatriya, whatever. But what we're really saying here is that what it's really saying is that the Buddha is going to take birth in a social position that allows them to benefit beings. Because if you are born in a place where you are too oppressed, you can't do what a Buddha needs to do. You wouldn't have the opportunity. So that's the caste. And then body size. And that, again, is because in different times, the humans have different sizes. And this isn't the scientific explanation. It's basically saying that back in the beginning of the first eon, the age of perfection, humans were very tall, and now they're shorter. Now we're only, what, between 5 and, well, I guess people are getting taller again. We're getting to, people are getting more nutrition, they're taller. So we say, what, 6 feet, 185 centimeters on average. That's kind of a, I guess that's not average, but, we're thinking about that as like sort of the ideal size. Maybe taller these days, I don't know. Anyway, so the different sizes, just depending, in other words, there are ways that they appear differently according to the society that they are born into. Now, here we come to a set of verses that summarize things that are spoken about in the auto commentary, talking about the different classifications or the ways to talk about a Buddha. And generally, there are 3 different things, 3 different qualities that we can say. Like there's the perfect cause, and there's the perfect result, or the perfect cause and result, and there's a perfect benefit, and then there's also the perfect wisdom. These are the 4 that are listed in the Abhidharma. So I'm not sure what it means by qualities here, and Wangshuk Dorje doesn't explain it. But at any rate, these qualities, they're each classified. There are 4 each, and they're gathered into 4 sets of 4. So the 4 are the perfect cause, the perfect result, the perfect benefit, and the perfect wisdom. So there are 4 sets in each of them. So the 4 causes is that a Buddha has completed the 2 accumulations in their entirety is the first one. The second is that the Buddha has familiarized or meditated upon them for a very long time with no interruptions, the 3 uncountable eons, and also with great respect. So those are the 4: the 2 accumulations over a long time with no interruptions and with great respect or dedication. And then the 4 results of wisdom are wisdom, the result of having the great wisdom, and also abandonment, having abandoned all the defilements, developing great power, and also having the form body that has the 32 marks and the 80 signs. Then there are 4 levels of wisdom. There's knowing everything, which is knowing all phenomena. There's knowing all aspects. So knowing all aspects is basically knowing all appearances, the way everything appears. And we spoke about the word aspect the other day. The 3rd aspect of wisdom is you're doing it without being taught, untaught. And the 4th is that it's without any effort. In the great vehicle, we talk about it being effortless and spontaneous. And so here it is the same here. And then there are the 4 qualities of the Buddha's abandonment. That is, abandonment of the afflictions, cleansing himself of the afflictions. What are these? Cleansing all the afflictions. And not only doing it, but also doing it for all, for forever. And in addition to the afflictions, all of the imprints of the afflictions as well. In addition to the afflictions, the Buddha has also eliminated all of the obscurations of absorption. So these are differences between a Buddha and a regular listener. A regular arhat probably wouldn't have abandoned all the imprints. They wouldn't have abandoned necessarily all the obscurations of absorption. So those distinguish the Buddha from the others. And the Buddhas also have special powers. So the 4 powers are the mastery to emanate. So they can, emanate various things. They can emanate their body. They can emanate as something. They can emanate multiples and so forth. They can bless and bless things to make them stay a long time and so forth. Or they can transform outside objects. They have the mastery to bless or discard life, which means that they can either bless their lifetime so that they can live for a long time, or they can decide that they have lived long enough and discard this body. And they have the mastery to go wherever things are hidden or obscured, to travel in the sky or far off, or to make things smaller. And they have a constant display of miraculous amazement. So those are the qualities of mastery. And the 4 of the form body, so these are of the physical form of the body. This is different than the Mahayana, a little different. It's not necessarily saying the Mahayana idea of a Nirmanakaya or a Sambhogakaya. It's a little different. The form body here is the form of the body in that last lifetime. As the marks major and signs, so the 32 major marks and the 80 signs, the powers of the body that we spoke about the other day, the Narayana power, the relics as hard as a Vajra, so and the relics as hard as the Vajra. So those are the powers of the form body. And then there are the four benefits, the deeds of emancipating from the three lower realms in samsara. This is one presentation. You can either, so there's one way to say four types of benefit is that you're eliminating sentient beings from the three realms of the hells, hungry ghosts, afflictions, and samsara. So the hell, hungry ghosts, animals, and then from samsara. So those are four benefits. Or another way of calculating these four benefits is saying that you benefit beings by the teachings, the three vehicles of the teachings, the vehicles of the listeners or Shravakas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, the Buddhas, and then also the correct worldly path that brings sentient beings to the higher realm. So those are the four types. So as proofs and rebuttals are prominent or multiple, these last two are in two sets of four. So there are different positions on the qualities of the body and on the qualities of the benefit for wanderers. And so for this reason, there are different presentations, the two sets of four. So this is just kind of like a really brief overview of the qualities of the Buddha, as it says here in the text. It says, these are just in brief. No one other than the Buddha could possibly recite them in full because the Tathagatas possess infinite marvelous qualities. So, there are many sutras that talk about how you could, even in the Mahayana, in the Sublime Continuum, it says that you could recite these qualities for eons and still not get through even 1% of them, 1%. They're infinite qualities. So those without merit could not hear of his qualities. So if you don't have enough merit, you're not even going to hear about the qualities. It's just going to go right over. You can't hear it. For example, a dog. If you can take your pet dog and give a lecture to your dog about the 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, and so forth, and it's just going to go right over your dog's head. Your dog is still just going to want to, what? Get pet or have more food. It's not going to make a difference to the dog. The dog does not have the right merit. Even if they do hear them, some fools, they measure things, as Wangchuk Dorje says, fools measure things against themselves and feel neither sincerity nor belief. They don't have faith. They sort of look at themselves and they think that nothing could be different than what they are. All people who sort of look like humans must be sort of the same. And gosh, I don't think this is possible. I could never do that. And so therefore no one could do it. And, I don't believe that, 10 powers. Yeah, 10 powers. If you can lift 10 kilograms, maybe that's 10 powers. I don't know. And so they're going to lack faith. They're feeling neither sincerity, means not feeling faith, nor feeling any belief. So these are the two types of belief. But whoever has great sincerity and belief in the Buddha and his features, such a being is wise. Because when we have faith in them, then we can develop the qualities ourselves, because then we can follow the paths that need to lead us to achieve liberation. So that is the description of the unshared qualities of a Buddha. And I'd like to go a little bit further this morning and also start talking about some of the shared qualities. So what do we mean by shared qualities in general? We mean qualities that aren't unique to the Buddha, but that other types of beings also have. And so this means that they're qualities that the Buddha shares with, like, the arhats, the qualities that the Buddha would share with people on the various noble paths, the people on the path of meditation and path of seeing, and also qualities that that some ordinary beings can develop. So there are 2 points here. There's the overview and explanation, and the overview has 2 parts: the brief teaching. The dharmas common, the dharmas meaning qualities or the phenomena or the capabilities common with the learners and ordinary beings, saying basically, so here Wangchuk Dorje is breaking the one stanza up into 2. And so not including the 18 unshared qualities, Wangchuk Dorje writes, other dharmas are held in common with the listener and self-Buddha learners. And some dharmas of qualities are common with ordinary beings. And so this is as I have just mentioned. The listeners would be like the regular arts. The self-Buddhas or Pratyeka Buddhas have some qualities in common with the Buddhas. Beings on the path of meditation can have some qualities of the Buddha, and ordinary beings can. So what are they? So the short explanation is they are the unprovocative, the knowledge from aspiring, unhindered, clairvoyance, etc. So the unprovocative means a samadhi where you, or a meditation where you meditate in order to prevent afflictions from arising in other beings. The knowledge from aspiring is basically making an aspiration. May I know something, sitting in meditation and then knowing it. Unhindered, well, we'll get to this one probably tomorrow, the unhindered knowledge. It's the four unhindered knowledges, sometimes taught as, translated in various ways. The Tibetan is Soso Yandapa Rigpa. Soso Yandapa Rigpa, and this is translated as the four distinct individual awarenesses and various ways. They're basically knowing words and speech without any hindrance. And so I've followed another translator and used the word unhindered. Excuse me. And then the clairvoyances, these are the 6 types of clairvoyances, and etc. includes all of the different types of absorptions and samadhis. So what are those dharmas, you ask? They're the unprovocative samadhi, the knowledge from aspiration, the 4 unhindered knowledges, the 6 clairvoyances. There are 6 different types of clairvoyance, so we'll get to those in a couple days, and etc. So etc. includes the 4 dhyanas, the 4 immeasurables, immeasurable loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, the 8 emancipations, so these are 8 different types of samadhi or absorption, similar with the 8 overpowering sense bases, and the 10 all-encompassing sense bases, the samadhis, and so on. And so on here actually includes only one thing, according to Yashomitra. Maybe it includes others as well, but in particular it includes the 3 gates of liberation. The liberation of emptiness, no more aspiration, and no lack of attributes. So these first 5 clairvoyances, 4 dhyanas, 4 formulas, 4 immeasurables, the first 7 emancipations, and the 10 all-encompassing sense bases, the 8 overpowering sense bases and 3 samadhis are common to ordinary individuals. In other words, these are all basically samadhis or things that arise out of samadhi, such as the clairvoyances, that ordinary individuals can practice. And the others are common to noble listeners. That would mean people on the paths of seeing, meditation, no more learning, the Pratyeka Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So the explanation, those 2 topics, those common to nobles and those common to both noble and ordinary individuals. So starting with the ones common to noble beings, there are 2 topics, explaining the features of each of the 6 qualities and explaining the features common to all 6 qualities. So what are the 6 qualities? Well, that's what it talks about here. The 3 topics are the unprovocative samadhi, the second is knowledge from aspiration, and the third is the 4 unhindered knowledges. So to get 6, you count the 4 separately. So 1 unprovocative samadhi, 1 knowledge from aspiration, 4 unhindered knowledges gives you 6. So the unprovocative samadhi says, the unprovocative is relative knowing on dhyanas and unshakable. So it is relative knowing. It's on the 4th samadhi, on a very high level of the 4th samadhi that we will speak about in a couple days when we come back after our day off tomorrow. So it's basically it's saying it's not just the 4th dhyana, it's like the highest development of the 4th dhyana. Unshakable means that it is with unshakable arhats are able to practice it. And human, you have to be a human. And what it focuses on are the unborn afflictions of desire, including their basis, are its sphere. Actually, instead of including their basis, it should be unborn afflictions of desire that have a basis are its sphere. So this a little bit, there isn't, what's here? A revision to the translation, shall we say. The unborn afflictions of desire that have a basis are its sphere. So, to read the commentary, some arhats produce a cognition such as, the suffering of sentient beings arises from the afflictions. So when they know me to be a superior field of qualities, that is someone who has all the qualities, May they not produce any of the afflictions sentient beings have, such as desire and so forth, when they observe me. In other words, can I be just someone who, when they see me, may all their afflictions be pacified? Because that path does not provoke or produce afflictions in anyone, it is called unprovocative samadhi. There are different translations of it. But basically it's saying that when someone, saying that when someone sees me, they not feel any desire or hatred. May I be able to go someplace and just by my very presence pacify disputes and so forth. So the unprovocative is by nature relative knowing. So it's relative knowing because it's looking at all sentient beings, right? And so or looking at sentient beings and looking at the afflictions in their being, which are defiled. So it has to be relative knowing as it knows the specific characteristics of the afflictions. It is on the support of the fourth dhyana's end. That is the highest development of the fourth dhyana, because that is the supreme of the easy paths. The dhyanas in general are the easy paths. And the easiest and the greatest of them is this supreme development. It is produced by arhats who are unshakable, but not by others. The reason is because the others could regress. They're the regressible ones, so they're the occasional arhats, because occasionally afflictions arise in other beings as well, so they cannot abandon the affliction. So the other beings are unable to inspire inspire other beings to abandon or to decrease their afflictions. Now, it's not actually abandoning the afflictions, it's just decreasing them or suppressing them for a time. It is produced by humans of the three continents, that is, except for the northern continent, unpleasant sound. The unborn future afflictions of desire that have a basis are its spheres, not including, but that have a basis are its sphere or focus. In other words, it's looking at future. You're thinking, may they not feel desire, hatred, or so forth in the future. The reason is because it is thinking, may future afflictions not arise, in other words, or just, I hope, may they not feel hatred, may they not feel desire, or so forth. It cannot discard afflictions that do not have a basis. In other words, one way of explaining this is we say that it cannot discard afflictions that are discards of seeing. That's one way of explaining it. Another way of explaining is that when we talk about the different kernels, remember we have some universal kernels that can look at all of the different realms, that can engage the phenomena on any of the different realms, as opposed to the other kernels that focus only on those in their own class. So the universal kernels don't have a basis, especially when they're focusing on kernels in other realms. And so those, according to Yashomitra, are the afflictions that do not have a basis. So there are two different explanations. So the next one is knowledge. So that is the unprovocative samadhi. So basically just saying, may I help other beings be pacified. And so Buddhas can do this, and the unshakable arhats can do this. And then the second is the knowledge from aspiration. Knowledge from aspiring is similar, focusing on all. So it's similar to the unprovocative, as it says in the commentary. The knowledge from aspiring is similar to the unprovocative samadhi. It is relative knowing in essence. It's on the level of the last jhana. It's among unshakable arhats, and it's on the human support of the three continents. But there is a difference, because it focuses not just on the afflictions and their bases, but on all that is form and all other dharmas. So, what are we talking about? Well, knowledge from aspiration is knowledge that comes after having made a previous aspiration. In other words, what you're doing is you're saying, I want to know X. And then you sit down in meditation, and you know X. After aspiring, I will know this and that. Saying this and that is kind of the old-fashioned way. It's the Sanskrit way of saying what we use in English. We use variables. We're all used to, we've had enough algebra education that we can use variables. So it's saying this and that. Then one enters the equipoise, the highest and fourth dhyana. That is the level I mentioned before of the greatest level, the fourth dhyana. And knows the object as it is. He knows the object just as it is. So you see it exactly. So I want to know, like the Buddha might think to, a Buddha might think to themselves, oh, okay, I want to know what the non-Utpalivarna is doing. They sit in the meditation and he'd know, oh, she's practicing meditation. She's doing whatever. Or whatever. Or Utpalivarna as in, I don't know if she was unshakable or not. Anyways, but another great arhat would then sit in meditation, and if she's a nun, she would be able to say, oh, or a layperson, she'd be able to say, okay, I want to know what X is doing and be able to see. I want to know something, and so they'd be able to know it. So it's on the level of the fourth jhana, so therefore, since higher levels are not the object, it does not know the formless realms directly, says the great exposition. In other words, on the fourth jhana, you're not, when you're on that level, you aren't able to perceive the formless realms. So the great exposition says that it does not. But other masters say that the Buddha knows even the formless realms directly through knowledge from aspiration. So the Buddha, the other traditions say that the Buddha has this greater level. So that, I think, is a good stopping point for today. We will continue with the 4 unhindered knowledges on Tuesday. And I think I see a question. The question reads, Chenrezig cried when he realized that he could not save every sentient being. Can you speak of this in the context of a Buddha having equanimity in the face of sentient beings, not seeing the great value of Dharma and creating negative karma? I think the difference here is that the reference is to a story of the Bodhisattva Chenrezig, and this comes from the Mahayana literature, where Chenrezig was practicing the Dharma, practicing meditation. He'd made a vow to not ever give up until he had brought each and every sentient being to the state of complete and perfect enlightenment, to never give up on any sentient being. He made this vow, and when he made the vow, and he said, if I break this vow, may I break into 1,000 pieces. So one day he's walking along the road or something, I don't know. This Mara comes up to him, disguised as a Brahma. And the Mara says, give me your hand. And Chenrezig says, excellent, I have an opportunity to benefit sentient beings. Which hand? Right hand. Okay. He takes out a knife with his left hand, he slices off his right hand. Then he picks up his right hand with the left hand and he gives it to the Mara. And the Mara says, no, your left hand is unclean. I don't want it. And wouldn't take it. The Mara had just been doing it to test him. And Chenrezig was so distraught that I can't do it. Sentient beings are too fickle. I can't help them. And burst into 1,000 pieces. So he's kind of hopeless, you know. But the Buddha is different. I mean, the Chenrezig was, a bodhisattva. The Buddha is different. The Buddha has equanimity. Now, equanimity doesn't mean that you don't lack that you lack compassion or that you don't feel. It means that you understand how things are going, and when things don't go the way you want them to go immediately, you still are okay with it because you know that eventually it's going to work out. The Buddha knows eventually. From the Mahayana perspective, the Buddha knows that any sentient being who comes in contact with the Buddha, and even if they do something terrible to the Buddha, is still going to awaken to enlightenment in the future just by the power of having made that connection. So the Buddha is not affected by it. The Buddha is taking kind of a long-range view, and so saying short-term, bad, long-term, it's good. So there's that, that kind of equanimity that comes from the wisdom. As we spoke about earlier today, the essence of great compassion is non-delusion, whereas the essence of compassion is non-hatred. So there's that difference, the non-delusion. Or as it says in another line, the essence of the great compassion is prajna. Because it has that prajna, that wisdom, the Buddha is, not going to be fazed when things temporarily don't go their way. on a certain level, the Buddha realizes the equality of all phenomena. So looking at it on that level, it's all the same. And so I think that is the difference there. Probably that is more of a Mahayana answer than a Great Exposition answer. So I think we will leave it there for now. And so let's recite the dedication prayers. Osanam de tam jesipani tobne nye beranam pamchete Kegana chi palong drumbai Sipe tsoledro kunyuro sho. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing and free. All being swiftly from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Chanchup semcho rimboche make panam ke juraje ke banyamba me baryang. Gonde gonde pelwar shore. May Bodhichitta, great and precious, arise in those who have not roused it, never weakening in those who have. May it grow ever stronger and stronger. So thank you very much. As a reminder, tomorrow on Monday we will not have class. We will have class again on Tuesday. So thank you very much.